The county engineer's hands were shaking. Not from the cold, not from the coffee, from the document sitting in front of him on the table. He had managed road projects for 19 years. He had navigated budget shortfalls, lawsuits, land disputes, and 2 separate federal reviews. He was not the kind of man whose hands shook. But his hands were shaking now. He pushed the paper across the desk to the project attorney. 1 sentence. Read it. The attorney leaned forward, adjusted his glasses, and read. His face went still. The road cannot be built. Not delayed. Not rerouted. Not paused for review. Cannot be built. $42 million in state highway funds, 6 years of planning, 2 federal environmental approvals. A contractor was already mobilized. 53 jobs promised to the county at the groundbreaking ceremony 3 weeks earlier. All of it stopped. Stopped by 14 feet of land. A strip no wider than a country kitchen. Half a mile long, sitting right in the center of the state's planned access corridor like it had been placed there on purpose. The attorney looked up. Who owns it? The engineer opened the second folder. A farmer. Name's Harlan Beets. Lives out on the old Cutter Road. How much does he want? Long pause. He hasn't said yet. Another pause, longer than the first. He bought that strip in 2002. For $10,000. The attorney set the paper down very carefully, the way a man sets something down when he does not trust his hands. $42 million, he said quietly, stopped by $10,000 worth of land. He was right. And the man who owned that land had been waiting 22 years for this exact phone call. His name was Harlan Beets, 71 years old. 4 acres of vegetables south of Mill Haven, Tennessee. He drove the same 1994 Ford pickup for the last 16 years. He wore the same brown canvas jacket to town every Tuesday. He kept his name out of every conversation he didn't start himself. Nobody in Mill Haven thought much about Harlan Beets. That was the first mistake. Before we go on, if you've ever watched a man get dismissed and quietly known he was the most dangerous person in the room, hit that like button right now. It costs you nothing. And it tells this channel to keep bringing you stories like this one. Keep watching. Because what Harlan did in that auction room in 2002 was everlasting. To understand how a 14-foot strip of land stopped a $42 million highway project, you have to go back 24 years. Not to a courthouse, not to a law firm, to the Mill Haven Public Library on a Thursday evening in October of 1998. Harlan had a habit. Once a month after he finished his deliveries at the farmer's market in town, he drove to the library and sat in the same chair by the east window. He read county records. Not newspapers. Not farming magazines. County records. Zoning maps from the 1940s, road survey filings from decades earlier, drainage easement documents that hadn't been touched since they were filed, boundary resolution reports that nobody requested and nobody read. His neighbor, Calvin Pruitt, asked him once what he was looking for. Harlan thought about it for a moment. Mistakes, he said. The county makes a lot of them. And they never go back and fix what they didn't have to fix. Calvin laughed. Harlan did not. That October evening in 1998, Harlan found what he had been looking for without quite knowing he'd been looking for it. A road survey filing from 1961. State Route 7 was slated for expansion. The state had surveyed a narrow corridor along the northern edge, 14 feet wide, running half a mile along a flat stretch of land east of town. The survey corridor was meant to become the legal right-of-way for the expansion lane. The expansion was canceled in 1967. But the corridor was never dissolved. Not officially. Not in writing. Not in the county system. It still existed. Separate parcel. No owner of record. Just sitting there on the county's plat map like a thin pencil line nobody had bothered to erase. Harlan read the filing twice. Then he read the legal description of the surrounding land. He went home and drew a map at his kitchen table. Route 7. The corridor. The land on either side. To the west, private farms and timber acreage, landlocked, developed, not going anywhere. To the east, 400 acres of flat cleared bottomland. Good drainage. Easy grade. Rail access less than 2 miles north. The kind of land that showed up in state infrastructure reports when planners needed a route for something big. Harlan looked at the map for a long time. He folded it. He put it in the coffee can above the refrigerator where he kept important papers. Then, he drove back to the library the following Thursday and started reading the state's long-range transportation corridor studies. It took him 3 visits to find what he needed: a 1994 state dot corridor feasibility study, a proposed connector road linking Route 7 to the new regional distribution hub planned for Harlan County, a project that had been discussed since 1991, delayed twice, but never canceled. The study identified the eastern bottomland as the most viable route, and the only way in or out of that corridor from the Route 7 side ran through the 14-foot strip. Harlan folded that paper too and put it in the coffee can. Then he waited. He watched that bottomland the way a patient man watches weather, slowly, without urgency. He noticed survey stakes appearing in 2000. He noticed a grading contractor out of Nashville walking the property perimeter in early 2001. He traced the company back through state business filings, a development group called Ridgeline Partners, LLC. He wrote everything in a composition notebook his wife Dora had bought him for Christmas in 1999. She had written his name on the cover in her careful handwriting. He never told her what it was for. By the spring of 2002, Ridgeline Partners had quietly assembled 340 acres of bottomland. Harlan had tracked every transaction, 14 separate parcel sales, all funneled through the same Nashville LLC. He had estimated their total spend at somewhere above $4 million. And they still didn't own the strip. The strip had no owner of record. It had been sitting unclaimed on the county plat for 35 years. The county, as it happened, was preparing to clear out several such parcels through a quiet title auction, mostly forgotten fragments of old surveys and road proposals nobody had ever claimed. The auction was scheduled for March 2002. Harlan circled the date in the notebook. March 14th, 2002. Millhaven County Courthouse Annex. A folding table, a hand-painted sign that said surplus land auction in black letters. 11 people in the room, most of them there out of curiosity. The county auctioneer was a soft-spoken man named Dale Puckett, who wore the same brown bolo tie to every public proceeding. The early parcels sold fast: a small drainage easement, a road remnant, a triangular lot nobody could build on. The prices were low. The interest was low. People refilled their coffee cups between bids. Then, Dale Puckett read the next listing. Parcel 19R, 14 feet wide, half a mile long, eastern boundary of Route 7 corridor survey dated 1961. Opening bid, $5,000. Silence. A man near the back shifted in his chair. He was tall, well-dressed, held a manila folder on his knee. He had arrived right at 9 a.m. and had not spoken to anyone. Dale waited. $5,000 for half a mile of grass along the highway. Anybody? The well-dressed man raised his folder slightly. 6. Dale nodded. 6,000. Looking for 7. A hand went up near the window. Older man. Canvas jacket. Coffee in a thermos he'd brought from home. 7. The well-dressed man didn't hesitate. 8. The older man looked at his thermos for a moment. 10. This is where something happened that nobody in that room expected. The well-dressed man, whose name it would later emerge was Thomas Greer, a land acquisition agent working for Ridgeline Partners, did not raise his folder again. He put it down on the table. He leaned over to the woman sitting next to him and whispered something. She shook her head. He looked at the parcel listing again. He looked at the old man by the window. And then Thomas Greer laughed. Not a quiet laugh. A full laugh. The kind that fills a room. $10,000, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, for a strip of grass 14 feet wide. He looked directly at Harlan Beets. Friend, I don't know what you think you're buying, but you are welcome to it. A few people chuckled. Dale Puckett looked at the ceiling. Harlan did not look up from his thermos. Going once, Dale said. Going twice. The hammer fell. Harlan Beets signed the paperwork, folded the deed, and slipped it into the inside pocket of his canvas jacket. He drove home, ate lunch, and went out to stake tomatoes for the rest of the afternoon. He did not tell Dora about the auction until that evening. She looked at the deed. She looked at him. "What is it?" "A strip of land along Route 7, he said. "What for?" He thought about it. "Not yet," he said. "But it will matter. Give it time." Dora had been married to Harlan for 41 years. She knew the difference between a guess and a certainty. She put the deed in the coffee can above the refrigerator. Neither of them mentioned it again for years. The first offer came in 2006. A real estate broker from Nashville knocked on the door on a Tuesday afternoon. Young. Polished shoes. He offered $60,000 for parcel 19R. Harlan thanked him and declined. The broker said the number could be adjusted upward. "I'm sure it can," Harlan said. He closed the door. Dora had heard everything from the kitchen. She came to the doorway. $60,000? "Yes. And you said no." "I did." She looked at him for a long moment, then went back to the kitchen. She never asked about it again. The county came in 2010 with a formal letter. $95,000. Eminent domain was mentioned, then withdrawn. Harlan read the letter twice, wrote the date and the amount in the composition notebook, and filed a written refusal. In 2015, Ridgeline Partners sent a lawyer. Briefcase. Three-piece suit. He sat at Harlan's kitchen table and drank the coffee Dora put in front of him without asking and offered $310,000. Harlan listened to every word the lawyer said. Then he looked at him over his coffee cup. "Tell your client I've been patient," he said. "More patient than he has." The lawyer left. Harlan opened the notebook and wrote 3 words. "Not yet." Wait. What none of the buyers understood, what Thomas Greer had laughed at in that auction room, was that Harlan was not holding the strip for what it was worth today. He was holding it for what it would be worth when the world finally needed it. In the spring of 2024, the Tennessee Department of Transportation announced the Millhaven Connector Project, a new access road linking Route 7 to the Regional Distribution Corridor, a $42 million project, 6 years in planning. Federal approval secured. Groundbreaking scheduled for April. Harlan read the announcement in the county paper on a Wednesday morning. He read it once, set the paper down, drank the rest of his coffee. Then he drove to the county planning office and asked to see the permit application. The clerk handed him a thick stack. He asked her which page showed the access corridor routing. "Page 28, she said. He found it in 40 seconds. The connector road's primary access point entered from Route 7, traveled along the northern boundary of the bottomland, and passed directly through a 14-foot corridor identified in the survey as Parcel 19, R. Harlan's land. He folded the paper neatly, thanked the clerk, and drove home. That evening he called his son, Marcus. Marcus was 44 years old, a property attorney in Knoxville with 17 years of practice. He specialized in easement disputes and land title litigation. "Dad." "What is it?" "I need you to look at something." "What kind of something?" "A highway permit." Silence on the line. "Parcel 19R?" Harlan smiled. "You remember. You showed it to me when I was 12, Marcus said. You told me to remember the parcel number." Harlan looked out the window at the dark field. "I did." "Is it time?" "It's time." Right here, pause for 1 second. If you know someone who's ever been told their idea was worthless, that their patience was foolishness, that they were wasting their time, share this video with them right now. Not later. Right now. Because what Harlan does next is for every person who was ever laughed at and stayed quiet anyway. Share it. Then keep watching. Marcus drove down that Saturday. He spread the permit application across the kitchen table. Next to it, the original 2002 deed. Next to that, Harlan's composition notebook, 22 years of dates, offers, names, and amounts in his careful, unhurried handwriting. Marcus read everything twice. Then he looked up. "Dad, their entire access corridor runs through your strip." "I know. The road cannot be built without it." Legally. They cannot condemn it without triggering a valuation process that would take 2 to 3 years. I know. Do they know you own it? Harlan leaned back in his chair. They're about to. 3 weeks later, the Tennessee DOTS project manager flagged an anomaly in the title search. Parcel 19R private ownership. The state's right-of-way assumption had been based on a 1967 survey that treated the corridor as unowned county land. It was not unowned. It had been owned continuously since March 14, 2002. The call started on a Tuesday morning. Harlan was feeding chickens when the phone rang. Unknown Nashville number. He let it ring 4 times. Then he answered. Mr. Beets. My name is David Sutton. I represent the Ridgeline Partners Investment Group and its current state contracting arrangement. We'd like to discuss the acquisition of Parcel 19R. Harlan said nothing. We're prepared to offer $450,000. Cash. 30-day close. Harlan set down the feed bucket. He looked at the strip of land along Route 7, barely visible through the tree line from where he stood. He had mowed it twice a year, every year, for 22 years, paid $62 in annual property taxes, kept the corner markers clear. I appreciate the call, he said. Sutton sounded relieved. So you'll consider it? It means I appreciate the call. He hung up. Called Marcus immediately. They offered $450,000. What did you say? I hung up. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Good. What do you want? Harlan looked out at the field again. I don't want to sell it. Then what do you want? I want what it's worth to them, not what they're offering. Marcus took a slow breath. Then I need to make a phone call. Marcus Beets had practiced property law for 17 years. He had handled 6 separate highway easement disputes in 3 states. He called David Sutton the following morning. I represent Harlan Beets on Parcel 19R. Open your permit file. Page 28. Your client's access corridor runs through my father's land. That parcel is worth what your project needs it to be worth. My father will not sell. Sutton's voice was careful. Everyone has a price, Mr. Beets. He wants terms, Marcus said. What terms? Permanent easement, $5,200 a month, inflation adjusted, transferable in perpetuity to his heirs, silence. Ridgeline Partners went quiet for 9 days. Then Sutton called back, $3,500 a month, 20-year term. Marcus called Harlan. Harlan listened, then said 4 words. Tell him, no deal. Marcus called Sutton back, $5,200, permanent, final. Ridgeline filed a legal challenge 11 days later. Abandonment claim. They argued Parcel 19R had effectively been relinquished when the 1967 road expansion was canceled, that the corridor had reverted to public use by default and could not have been legally auctioned in 2002. Marcus spread his files across the conference table and started at the beginning. Property tax records. Millhaven County. Parcel 19R. Every year forward, without a single gap. The county had assessed and taxed Parcel 19R as private property every single year since the auction. $62 a year, paid in full, always before the deadline. 22 consecutive years. He also pulled the original quiet title auction authorization from 2002. The county had legally established Parcel 19R as an ownable parcel before offering it for sale. There was no procedural gap, no ambiguity, no legal basis for abandonment. Marcus called his father the night before the hearing. Dad, did you keep everything? Everything. The auction paperwork? In the coffee can. The original 1961 survey filing? Harlan paused. I pulled that from the library microfiche in November of 1998. Photographed it. The photograph is in the coffee can. Marcus was quiet. You've had this ready since 1998, he said. Since 1998, Harlan confirmed. And you never told anyone. There was nothing to tell yet. The hearing lasted 40 minutes. Ridgeline's attorney argued abandonment. Marcus placed 3 documents on the table. The 1961 survey filing, the 2002 auction authorization, and 22 consecutive years of county tax assessments. Then he said one sentence. You cannot abandon what the county has taxed as private property for 22 consecutive years and you cannot challenge an auction the county authorized and documented in its own records. The judge reviewed the filings, looked at Ridgeline's attorney. Do you dispute these tax records? The attorney hesitated. No, Your Honor. Do you dispute the 2002 auction authorization? No, Your Honor. The judge set the papers down. Parcel 19R is valid private property. The abandonment claim is denied. Case closed. Ridgeline Partners called Marcus that same afternoon. David Sutton's voice was different now. Quieter, more careful with every word. Our clients will accept your father's terms. Marcus stayed calm. $5,200 a month, permanent easement, inflation adjusted. Transferable in perpetuity to his heirs. Yes, we agree. Marcus called Harlan. They accepted. Harlan was quiet for a moment. Every term? Every term. Another pause. Then Harlan said, $62. What? My yearly taxes. $62 a year. 22 years. Now worth $62,400 every year. He drove to the county clerk's office himself to file the easement agreement. The same clerk who had handed him the permit file on that Wednesday morning. She looked at the agreement, looked at him, and didn't say anything. Harlan thanked her and drove home. He went to the kitchen, took the composition notebook out of the coffee can, and turned to the last page. He picked up the same pen Dora had kept in the jar by the sink. He wrote one line, March 2024. Done. He set the pen down. Then he sat in the chair by the kitchen window and looked out at the strip of land along Route 7. 14 feet wide. Half a mile long. He had mowed it 44 times, paid taxes on it 22 times, turned down 4 offers, outlasted a legal challenge, waited 2 decades and 4 years for the one call that mattered. Thomas Greer, the land acquisition agent who had laughed at the auction in 2002, had left Ridgeline Partners in 2019 after a failed commercial development in Chattanooga. He never learned what had happened to Parcel 19R. Harlan never knew Thomas Greer's name. He had never asked. He had not needed to. Before I close this story, think about someone in your life who is playing the long game right now. Someone who is being patient while others are moving fast and loud. If this story is for them, subscribe to this channel and send it to them today. Every week we bring you stories about people exactly like that. Men and women who thought quietly, waited patiently, and won completely. Subscribe now. The button is right there. And make sure you never miss one. The county paper ran a brief item about the easement agreement the following week. 3 paragraphs. No photograph. Harlan's name appeared once. Most people in Millhaven skimmed past it. That was fine with Harlan. He had never needed anyone to understand what he was doing while he was doing it. The only audience that mattered was the land itself, the county records. The coffee can on top of the refrigerator, which still held the 1961 photograph and the original deed, and every document he had collected across 26 years of paying attention. He had never bragged, never called the county planning office to remind them of their mistake, never drove past the construction site with any particular expression on his face. He just mowed his garden, drove his 1994 pickup, and wore his canvas jacket to town on Tuesdays. Some men spend their lives chasing value. They move fast, they offer loud numbers, they mistake urgency for intelligence. Harlan Beets had spent his life finding value that others had forgotten was there. Then he waited for the world to remember it. That is not luck. That is not stubbornness. That is a particular kind of sight, the ability to look at a strip of grass 14 feet wide and see not what it is, but what it will be when the world finally needs it. Thomas Greer had seen 14 feet of grass and laughed. Harlan Beets had seen 22 years of patience and $62,400 a year for the rest of his life. He paid $10,000 for it. He walked out of that courthouse annex with his thermos in one hand and a deed in his coat pocket, and he drove home and staked tomatoes, and he never once looked back. The road is being built now. Right through Parcel 19R, right on schedule. Every truckload of materials that passes through that corridor will pass through Harlan's land. $5,200. Every month, for the rest of his life, and then for his children's lives after that. Some men collect speed, some men collect noise. Harlan Beets collected patience. And patience in the end was the only thing that mattered. Now, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, would you have taken the $450,000 cash and walked away? Or would you have held for $5,200 a month for life? Think about it carefully before you answer. Because that question says more about how you think than most people want to admit. I'll see you in the next story.